Whether you like being self-reliant and prepared for anything, or you're a prepper getting stocked up for whatever's next. It could come from food shortages, supply chain issues, just world disruption. I can tell you this, you do not want to have the emergency of running out of food. You might be one of those people that go out and find an amazing deal on meat, being able to purchase it at a lower price, bringing it home, and being able to preserve it shelf stable, room temperature, long term is priceless. Especially when you see how easy this is. Whether you're prepping or not, my recommendation is to buy chicken now. Buy it, get it home, pressure can it so that you can store it without refrigeration. What we're doing today is pressure canning raw packed chicken. It's extremely easy. Welcome back to all the subs, especially you guys that have canned probably a lot longer than me. I appreciate all your comments. If you're brand new here and you like weekly tips, educational tips, be sure to hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date. Let's jump into this. Okay, so we've got other canning videos that we've done in the past. I might be able to give you extra tips in those ones that I forget to put in these ones. And if I miss anything out there, there's a lot of canning experts that watch us and we'll probably put a comment in the comments. Let's start by going through some of the things that we'll need today. We will be using our All-American pressure canner. It is a model number 921. We will leave a link in the description below. If you're just getting into canning and need to pick up a pressure canner, highly recommended. We're gonna need hot water, division trays. We'll be cooking on a gas stove. If that's different than what you guys are using, be sure to check your owner's manual on your particular pressure canner to make sure it's compatible. We'll be using pint-sized jars today, jar grabber, funnels, and the little spatula measuring stick. We'll also be using chicken thighs. I have cut these chicken thighs up into about 4 to 5 pieces per thigh. Also, we'll be using some mixed up seasoning, homemade seasoning for chicken. This homemade seasoning is super good. We use it in almost every single chicken recipe that we use. So adding it now is a no-brainer for us. You don't have to use any seasoning at all. But if you'd like to, we'll add this seasoning recipe down in the description below for you. It is absolutely good. Now remember, pressure canning meat is a preferred method for canning meat. But if one day you're ever in an emergency where you lose power and you're about ready to lose all the meat in your freezers and you need to do something quickly, I've got a video right here that shows you how to can meat without a pressure cooker. This method's been used for many, many years and still used today. But like I said, the preferred method is the pressure canner. Buy chicken now is my recommendation. It might be a food shortage, it might be a chicken shortage. Bird flu could kick up and you could see chicken just not available anymore. So buying it now and stocking it up, putting it in the pantry for long-term storage could be a good move. Another thing I can recommend is picking up a bunch of jars right now. It's been really hit and miss. Sometimes we find them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we gotta go to 2 or 3 places before we find some. And then sometimes we find some and they're not the ones we're looking for. Like in this case, we wanted pint-sized jars with the wide mouth, but this is all we could find, but we're still gonna can. Always inspect the rim for dents. You don't want any dents because those dents could hinder the seal. Okay, so we've cut up all the chicken thighs. Pint-sized jars are gonna take around a pound of chicken. You chop it up a little bit, you can fit it down in there with less air bubbles a lot more easily. Start with clean hands. Okay, so with our seasoning, we're gonna start with 2 teaspoons per jar. Okay, so the next thing to do is to pack the chicken into the jar. You're gonna wanna shoot for 1 inch to 1.25 inches below the top of the rim of the jar. Then you're gonna wanna take this fancy little spatula with the measuring device at the end, pack it down, try to get out as much air as possible, recheck it, add a little bit chicken if you can. 18 jars, that's 18 pounds of chicken that we're gonna be able to stick on our shelves at room temperature if that's the case, but store it up to 15 years. This is incredible. just like that. You can check it with your little measuring thing. Okay, so there we go. That's how it's looking right there. We were a little bit shy on meat, so I'll show you what to do when that happens. But we are ready to go to the next step. Okay, so when doing your 2 to 3 inches of water, use hot tap water to fill it up to that mark. Okay, so the reason I'm only doing around 2 inches versus 3 inches is they're a little bit squattier of a jar. You don't want that water to be up by your jar lid or over your jar lid. I explain this in my pressure canning hamburger video, and I give you a pro tip in that one to handle that situation. Okay, so what I'm gonna do with the hot water is I'm just gonna put a little splash in each one. It's like a 1/4 inch, not even a 1/2 inch. So hit it with your little spatula a little bit, kind of get some of the air bubbles out. What's gonna happen is that chicken's gonna put out tons of juices, but not necessarily enough to submerge all of the chicken. So you wanna add a little bit of extra water, just enough to keep it all kind of under the top. Okay, so that's how we're looking. You wanna make sure you're not above that bottom rim, for sure. You wanna be below that bottom rim. We're still 1 inch to 1.25 inches. Then with this last jar, you're just gonna fill it up with water to about the same level, right about there, just so it doesn't act as a bobber. You want all the jars in place in there as a filler, even if you got water, because these guys are gonna be rattling around and jarring around. You don't want one to go sideways and break. At this point, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the burner, get the water starting to warm up. And something I forgot to mention in the beginning is you're gonna need vinegar. You're gonna need vinegar for 2 reasons. One, to wipe off the top of your jars. You wanna make sure that there's no food particles on the top of the rim that's gonna hinder the seal. The other thing you're gonna do with vinegar is you're gonna add 2 tablespoons to the water in the pressure canner. What this is gonna do is prevent water spots, mineral spots on your jars and lids. Then you'll take a new lid, place it on the top, tighten this down just hand tight. Last video I went a little bit snug on the first one. But you put that new lid on there, your ring down, just normal hand tight. Okay, on the next thing we got to do before we put on this lid is we need to do the seal all the way around with some olive oil. So we get a little bit of olive oil on your finger, whatever. But since it's a metal to metal seal, we have to put a little bit of olive oil all the way around the perimeter to help from sticking. Now we're gonna get this lid on. You'll see there's an arrow on this particular model. It'll go right there, and then it's gonna swivel over. Then what you're gonna do is you're gonna wanna bring up these opposite sides. Opposite sides. Tighten them down just a little bit. Then you wanna go around and give them a little bit of a snug turn. That way it seats down nice and even. So this little port right here, we gotta wait for this to be blowing up steam to get rid of all that oxygen out of there before we put on our little weight. Okay, so this is what the steam looks like coming out. We're gonna set a timer for 10 minutes and then we're gonna put on the weight. Okay, it's been 10 minutes of the steam. Now we're gonna put on our weight. We are a 15 weight because of our elevation being above 1,000 feet. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna wait for it to start sputtering. Once it starts sputtering, we're gonna adjust our heat and start our cook timer. Okay, another important thing is having some literature, a book, how to do this when your power goes out, because you're not always gonna be able to resource the internet. When you do have internet, you're gonna go to National Center of Home Preservation is a site that you can go to and reference. You can type in whatever you're gonna be pressure canning. It'll tell you all the steps, temperature, how long to pressure can it. It's an excellent resource to use for, especially if you're new to pressure canning. So pressure canning raw packed chicken, the way we're doing it, we'll be pressure canning it for 75 minutes. Okay, so once you start sputtering, and it's a constant sputter, what you're gonna wanna do is you're gonna wanna lower your heat down and find that perfect spot. You want this thing to sputter about 1 to 4 times per minute. So this is the so-called tricky part that people are nervous about. It's super easy. After you do it once, it's gonna be super, super easy. You find these little sputters, you adjust your dial on your stove, and you'll find your sweet spot on your stove. Once you get one under the belt, it's super easy. Okay, so this is what a little sputter moment looks like. It's gonna sputter just like that. That's about how long it takes, and you want 1 to 4 of those every minute. They say if you drop below pressure, then it's no good. You almost have to restart it. So make sure that you don't drop below pressure, find your sweet spot, and then it's a downhill slide for 75 minutes in this case. Okay, so the 75 minutes is up. What we're gonna do now is turn the heat off. We're gonna wait for that dial to go all the way down to 0 before we remove our weight. For us, this usually takes just under an hour, so don't sit there and wait for it. Okay guys, so we've given it a couple hours. We've given it plenty of time because we had some time. But like I said, it usually takes about an hour. So if you give it an hour, you should be good to go. What you're gonna wanna do first is take off your weight. Always open it up away from you. As you heard, there was still a little fizzle in there, a little bit of pressure. Now we're gonna unscrew this thing the same way that we screwed it on. Same deal, you wanna open it up away from yourself. Just in case there's just a lot of steam. You don't wanna risk getting steam in your face. Okay, so you can see after a couple hours just how hot these things get. They are just boiling to town. Okay, so I'm not even gonna pull these things out tonight. I'm gonna let them sit overnight, let them acclimate. You never wanna subject these jars to a fast temperature change because you could crack the glass. So that's why I'm just gonna leave it in there, let them cool down. I'll pull them out in the morning. They should be cooled down quite a bit by then. Good morning, everyone. The jars have cooled down nicely, so we're gonna pull them out. If they're still warm, you might wanna use your jar grabber. So there's still 1.5 inches of water in there. Next thing you do is you take the rim off. We've had a few people ask why we take the rims off. It's so that you can reuse them. These things are sealed. Consider them glued on there at this point. You want to look across, you want to make sure that the top's not popped, and you want to make sure it has a little concaveness to it. That way you know your seal's good. We did have a seal not make it. So you see this seal right here had a hollow sound to it. It didn't seal. You can tell. So it's a faulty lid. This one you throw into the fridge and use it within refrigeration time, just like cooked chicken. Like I said, it's a good thing that we had one seal fail because I want to show you the difference. Lids like this are produced in a factory. Sometimes you're going to have a failure, and I've read up on it. A lot of times it has to do with pores and this coating that goes onto the lid, but I want to show you the difference in the sound. You can tell, like this one sounds like it doesn't have air, and this one sounds hollow like a drum. That's one of the biggest ways you can tell a seal did not seal. And oftentimes the lid's gonna come off with the rim. But as I said, you find something like that, it's cooked, it's ready to go. You just stick it in the fridge, use it as if you have cooked chicken. It's gonna last a week or two in the fridge. Put it on a salad. The other ones are ready to sit on the shelf for up to 15 years. And don't forget to label your jar or put a sticker on the side, date and what it is. Another tip is you don't need to add seasoning to this chicken. But many people agree that if you don't add seasoning, use a chicken broth instead of that hot water that I added to it. It definitely helps with adding a lot of flavor to the chicken. But either way can be done. Now, any safety organization is only going to recommend you to store it for up to a year, I think 18 months max. But for freshness, 3 to 4 years is what they recommend. But historically, it's been known to last up to 15 years if you get to store it in a cool, dark, and clean place. Now, if you're shooting for that 15-year shelf life, you're gonna wanna try to keep it as cool as possible. And when I say as cool as possible, that's 38 degrees to 45 degrees. So you're gonna need like a root cellar, ground cellar. If you don't have anything like that, you can make your own by digging a bucket down into the ground, putting a lid on it. You get down 3 feet in the earth, and you're gonna have cooler temperatures even if you're in a hot climate. For those of you that are in other parts of the world, that's 3.3 to 7.2 Celsius. If you're shooting for like 5 years, 10 years, these can be stored just on your shelf, room temperature. They recommend below 85 degrees, but like I said, the cooler, the better. Cool, dark, and clean place. Do your best. Always examine your jar before using it. Make sure you still have a concave lid. Make sure it still sounds like it's sealed. Sniff test, make sure it smells good. If it looks, smells, anything wrong, err on the safe side and don't use it. Remember, getting chicken now, getting meat now, and being able to can it on your shelf without refrigeration is huge. We don't know how high these prices are gonna get. We don't know how empty these shelves are gonna get, but the potential of all of that happening is super high. So get prepared, be ready. If you haven't canned yet, consider canning. It's gonna make you feel like you're at a higher level of this prepping game. Again, if you find these videos helpful, informative, hit the like button. If you like weekly tips, be sure to hit that notification bell. You guys have a good rest of your day. We'll see you on the next one.